Welcome back to another episode of the Meaningful People Podcast. My name is Yaakov Langer.
And my name is Nachi Gordon. Download the Meaningful Minute app. It's great. It's something you would say.
Yeah, well, you don't have perfect vision.
It's true.
He wears glasses.
Yeah,
guys.
you just ousted all of our people who have glasses.
No,
Like,
just you.
Okay.
Very high prescription.
Fair
we
enough.
sat down with the one and only Saul Werdiger, also known as Shlomo Werdiger, who is the CEO and founder of OuterStuff. OuterStuff is a company. And yes, they are a company. OuterStuff is the leading manufacturer and provider of licensed youth sports apparel for brands such as the NBA, MLB, MLS, UFO, PG2, NFL.
Did you say UFO?
Yeah, I just throwing in random letters
fine.
there. But they do a lot of good stuff out there in the sports world. But he also has a very big position with the Agudath Israel of America.
Yeah, he's I think technically the heart of the Agudath, and you'll hear in this episode. And more than that, in this past year, we're in 2020, if you have been to the Siyum Hashas in MetLife Stadium, it is because of Mr. Saul Werdiger. And we get into that story of how that came to be and so many other places in his life, how he used his experiences to help Clow. So you're in for a real treat, everyone.
Once again, thank you to our friends over at AMR Pharmacy. You guys rock. Yaakov got all of his pills on time this week, so he's nice and he's not cranky today.
Yeah, I'm good.
And a big shout out to Daily Giving, dailygiving.org. You guys will hear a little bit more about them in this episode.
Welcome to the Meaningful People Podcast, the podcast where we talk to people who are
meaningful.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, we are here with Mr. Saul Shlomo Werdiger. Do you go more by Saul Werdiger or Shlomo Werdiger? Which one?
Depends which world.
Right.
In the business world, obviously it's Saul. In the communal world, in the home, it's Shlomi. So it's fine. Either way is fine.
Okay. So you aren't Hasidish at all. Did you have a Hasidish background? But I know you're very involved with a lot of Rebbas and stuff. So I want to first talk about your background.
Not Hasidish is only because of the way I look, maybe.
Oh, you're saying internally.
But I consider myself very Hasidish, actually, and a Ger Chassid. We said if you cut my vein over here, there's two things that are going to come out. One is Ger, and the other one is the Agudath. So I'm a Ger Chassid from. This is heritage still from my father's Chayil Levracha. From my family, we come from a very Choshev Ger family. And my history goes back. I didn't grow up like that. So yes, I grew up in davening in a Ger Shtibel in Borough Park. I never wore a Ger Levush, or I never went to Ger Yeshivas. But my first connection, interesting that you mentioned this. I'll tell you a cute story. So I'm a kid. I went to Rebbas. I went first to Torah Semis in Borough Park. I grew up in Borough Park. I was born in Borough Park. I was one of the first kids born in Maimonides. So I was born in
one of the first kids born in Maimonides.
Well, from kids. I mean, it wasn't that, Maimonides today is a big hospital. Thousands of from kids are born. There wasn't that big of a from community in Borough Park in those days when I was born. But so I went to Yeshiva Torah Semis, then I went to Rebbas, and then it was time for me to go to Eretz Israel. I wanted to go to Israel to learn. So imagine so my father says, I tell my father, okay, I want to go to Israel. And he says, okay. You'll go to Israel, but wherever the Ger Rebbe tells you what yeshiva you're going to go to, that's where you're going to go. And I said, are you kidding me? Imagine I would send my son today to Israel. He says, where's my dorm room? Who am I sleeping with? What yeshiva am I going to? What's my whole, what's my status? What am I doing? And I said to him, well, go to Reb Chaim Kanievsky and ask him where you're going to go learn yeshiva. Wherever he tells you, that's where you're going to take your suitcases. You're going to find a place to sleep. So I said to my father, are you kidding me? He says, that's the condition. If you want to go to Israel, you have to go to the Ger Rebbe, and you have to ask him where you want to go learn. Okay, I was a good son. I was a pretty good son. But I said, okay. So I picked myself up. You just picture this. I'm a regular kid. I'm like who I am now. I didn't have a beard and a payas. I'm not a Chassidish kid.
Did you have a mustache then?
I'll tell you about the mustache in a second. My father arranges for somebody. I come with my suitcases, and I have no idea where I'm sleeping that night. I landed, in the morning or in the afternoon, and I come with my two suitcases into Ger. Taxi driver takes me into the Ger Rebbe, and it was the Beis Yisrael. You guys are too young to know, but the Beis Yisrael was unbelievable personality. You looked at him, his eyes, and you started shaking. He was like an unbelievable, person in personality. And so I walked in, but I never saw him before. So I come into the Ger Rebbe, and I said to him, I put down my suitcases. Somebody takes me into the Ger Rebbe, and I see him, and I'm really shaking, from fear at the Beis Israel, the Ger Rebbe. And he says to me, I said to him, my name is so and so. He gives me a smack across my face. He says, you're going to tell me? He says, I knew your grandfather, who you were named after. That's what he says to me. And he says, what do you want? What are you here for? I said, my father sent me to ask the Ger Rebbe where I should go learn. And he put a big smile on his face, and he called in, he had a bell on his desk. He rang the bell, and he called in the Gabba, and he tells the Gabba, call up. It was Rav Baruch Shimon Schneerson was his name. He was the son-in-law of the Chibina Rav. He was the closest living relative, Schneerson, to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was an Odom Gadol. He was a big Odom Gadol. This was a year after the Patir of the Chibina Rav, famous Chibina Yeshiva. And he says, tell him that I'm sending him somebody to take a faher for the yeshiva. Okay, so two things were relief. Number one is Chibin wasn't exactly my first choice. It wasn't the Mir. It wasn't the Mir. It wasn't even, Hebron or Slabotka. It was a pretty Chassidish yeshiva at that time. It was a pretty Chassidish yeshiva. But I knew that at least that I'm in Yerushalayim, which is good because Chibin was in Yerushalayim. And I figured, okay, so I go there. I'll never forget this. Some guy was waiting for me downstairs. A taxi driver takes me with my suitcases, drops me off in Shabim, which is in Tel Arza. It's not far from where Ger was, not far from Mir, not far from the middle of Yerushalayim. And I walk into this Rosh Yeshiva, and I take a faher. Baruch Hashem, I think I passed the faher. I'm not sure if I passed it, or he was so scared that the Ger Rebbe sent me that he couldn't refuse me anyway. So I'm not sure what happened. And so they said, okay, you're in the yeshiva. They give me a room. I go downstairs. I unpack my stuff. I go upstairs, and I daven Mariv, and I have something to eat. And I'm strange because I really don't know anybody there, and it's a pretty Chassidish place. And I was mentally and physically exhausted, as you can imagine, and I go to sleep. And all of a sudden, there's somebody shaking me. I take a look at my thing, and I see it's like 5 o'clock in the morning. It's my first night in Israel. There's some Ger Chassid with the Langa Payas shaking me, literally shaking. He says, wake up, wake up. I said, are you out of your mind? I take the covers. I said, who are you? He says, wake up. And I refused to get up. He took the Negelwasser, and he poured it on my head. He says, you gotta get up. The Ger Rebbe is waiting for you. I said, who are you? I said, are you crazy? He says, I'm your chavrusa. I'm your fatug's chavrusa. That means I'm your early morning chavrusa. I said, yo, my what? And that was my indoctrination. He was my chavrusa. The Ger Rebbe, the first morning I was there, sent somebody to pick me up, woke me up. After a week or two, I woke up by myself. But every single morning, he took me and he walked with me to Ger. And we learned every morning from 5:30 till 7 till I came back and davened in the yeshiva. So he asked me a Ger Chassid. That was my first indoctrination to the Ger Rebbe, to the Beis Israel. And I have tons of stories after that, but he had a tremendous influence on my life. So my Chassidish, I don't look Chassidish, but I'm Chassidish as you could get.
You're totally Chassidish.
Yeah.
Very Chassidish. As a matter of fact, I just had, and my closeness to Ger since then has been, with all the Ger Rebbes. As a matter of fact, the Ger Rebbe, the current Ger Rebbe, just was recently in America not long ago. We stayed in my house in Muncie for 3 weeks, which was quite interesting. We had every Gadol in America, and thousands and thousands of people came to my house to see the Ger Rebbe. So I straddled both worlds. I straddled that Chassidish world. He asked me with Rebbes. Yes, I'm a Chassid, and I'm a Ger Chassid, but I believe in Rebbes. I believe in Gidolim. I believe in the power of Rebbes and Rosh Yeshivas, and that they're holy people, and that their brachas are very, very important, and they sustain the generation. So I'm in the business world, and I deal with sports all day, but I have tremendous emunas chachamim and believe very much in the power of the koyach of Gidolim and Rebbes.
And you believed a lot in your father as well, and not to fight him.
Yeah,
on
well,
that.
it's I'm not sure. Wasn't that good of a kid, and but I just it had Ger. It meant so much to him. It was a connection, to the past. It was a connection. Polish Jewry. My father. I have pictures of my father as a little kid. Standing next to the Ger Rebbe, wearing his little kashketel, his little hat, So I saw it was so important to him, and I said, okay, but thank God I listened to him, because it was definitely, set something in my life that was very important, that till today I cherish. So.
You mentioned before, there is something behind your mustache. There is a story there.
No, the story was that this Beis Yisrael, the Ger Rebbe, everybody always asked me, how come you never grew a beard? And so Beis Yisrael, the Ger Rebbe always used to tell me, Shlomo, at least in Yiddish, he said, Chot shos noch devons. It means at least you still have the mustache. and a cute story, I was traveling when I became very close also with Rabbi Aaron Leib Steinman, Zecher Tzadik Kodesh Levrocha. He was a tremendous personality, and I was very fortunate that the Ger Rebbe and Rab Steinman, you guys, I don't remember, but a couple of years ago, made worldwide trips to give chizuk to communities all over the world. And I was very fortunate that I was invited along on these trips from the Ger Rebbe side. So I went with my good friend Shimi Glick, who went with Rab Steinman, and we flew all over the world to be mechazik of the people. We were, of course, in New York and in Los Angeles, and went to Toronto and Montreal and in Paris and Lyon, and it was something that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. To take these two Gidolim, went all over the world. Thousands of people saw them. So we once had the occasion to sit on an airplane. It was a private plane, and it was a time that Rabbi Aaron Leib, and his son. It was like a 4-seater configuration, it was 4-seater, and one of the sections of the plane. So I was sitting with the Ger Rebbe, and Rabbi Aaron Leib Steinman was sitting with his son. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, that's
so
a cool plane ride.
His son says to me in a joking way, he says, "Tell me something. You were so close to all the Ger Rebbes, and you're so involved in the Agudath. How is it possible that you don't have a beard? Why don't you have a beard?" And he was saying it seriously. And so I said over to, and Rabbi Aaron Leib was like smirking a little bit, and I said, well, at least I still have the mustache. The Ger Rebbe, the Beis Yisrael, told me, Shlomo, at least you still have the mustache. And he started laughing.
Really?
And Rabbi Aaron Leib got so angry. He gave a bang on the table. He says, laughing? Every word of the Beis Yisrael was Torah v'Kodesh. Every word of his is holy. And he went through a whole shmuz with me, Rabbi Aaron Leib, for 10 minutes about a makar from a Chassan Sofer about mustaches.
Really?
Yes, so that's my mustache story. But he always reminded me, he always said to me, whenever I went into Rabbi Aaron Leib, he always used to, after that, all the time, he says, oh, my Ger Chusad is here, my Ger Chusad is here. But that's my mustache story, but I never grew the beard.
Interesting. That's really interesting. So after you came back from Eretz Israel, you reconnected or connected with family in Australia?
No, that wasn't reconnected. So I don't know where family, but no, we actually. So my father is a was a Holocaust survivor. Was actually he actually was freed from Buchenwald together with Rabbi Lau. We were very close with the Lau family because of that, and some other people. My father was freed by the American General Patton. Famous story. Freed Buchenwald, was a concentration camp. And the whole family was wiped out. Actually, just now, Gimelov, we had yahrzeit from most of the Polish family. And from my father was from a town called Sosnovitz, was taken to Auschwitz and in the crematoriums around this time now, or before Tisha B'Av. And my father survived just with one brother. That's all that was left in the whole family, him and his one brother. And they were sickly after the war. They were sent to a Red Cross camp in Switzerland. And my uncle, Zechron Avracha, who just passed away a couple of years ago, my father, they were separated. My father got papers to come to America. We had cousins in America who sponsored him. And my uncle developed some sort of like a tuberculosis, something that precluded him from, he wasn't well enough for them to let him into America. We had some cousins in Australia. They sponsored him. And the plan was that he's going to go to Australia, get better, and eventually meet up with my father in America. But Baruch Hashem has other plans. He came to Australia. He got married, built a beautiful family, but at the other end of the world. So there's a Saul Shlomo Werdiger in Australia. We have a duplicate family. My uncle married into a very prominent Chabad family. As a matter of fact, I'm very proud. If you go to Melbourne, Australia, my uncle became a very successful business person in Australia. Big Balstock, him and his wife and the Chama, she should be well, my aunt. They built a beautiful family, and they, so many moistus and buildings in Australia, Chabad, say the Werdiger building, the Werdiger hall. But the lesson that we could all take from this is that they lived, you can't get too further places away in the world from each other, New York and Melbourne, Australia. My father was the older brother. And the story is how my father during the war really saved my uncle's life and really took care of him. My father was the older brother. I was a kid growing up. There was never a year from the day that I was born, from my Pidyon Aben, okay, till, for 63 straight years. In those days, it wasn't like you pick yourself up today and you get on a plane, even though it's still far at 16, 18 hours. In those days, you had to do island hopping. You went from New York to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles to Hawaii, and from Hawaii to Fiji, and Fiji to, you went out. But for 63 straight years, my uncle came to visit my father every single year, at least 1 year, and never missed anything in our family. So we're very close. It just comes to show you that, mishpacha and closeness of mishpacha, you don't have to live around the corner from each other to maintain a close relationship with mishpacha. So that's the Australia story.
I want to get to the Siyum Hashas and MetLife Stadium, but I think there's a lot behind that, and I think it starts with your company, OuterStuff. So the first question is, how did that all begin?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So I'm going to try not to be. Some people may have, I one of my real passions in the last 10 years has really been because, I always said to myself, why did the Rebbas Shalom put me? And I have so many friends and successful friends that are in what I would call more run-of-the-mill normal businesses, right? So real estate, nursing homes, the typical, not typical lawyer. I'm not stupid. I could have probably been a good lawyer. I could have gone to law school or other businesses. Why did the Rebbas Shalom put me and my family, by the way, my kids are in the business with me.
Yeah, Rami Schoenfeld. Yeah, I speak to him all the time.
Yeah, Rami and my son Shmuley and Srili and son-in-law Eli Amsterdam is Mayor Shatner's
of course
father-in-law. And why did he put us in the sports business? I could have been into anything else. And I think as the years evolve, and we'll get to the Siyum Hashas was one of the things that years evolve, I realized that he wanted somebody in this business to accomplish and make a kiddush Hashem. And Hashem wants you to, in every day, what you do to make a kiddush Hashem and what you do. And who would think, I speak to Project Inspire kids, Olami kids. Last week, we have this Lakewood Fellowship program. We have interns, and we have hundreds and hundreds over a course of a year, hundreds of kids that come through our offices, college kids and everything else in Inspire. And I see why, because when you take them to a successful, Jewish business person and a normal business, they understand the guy's successful. Rebbas Shalom was good to him, and he's successful in real estate. But sports, that's like the Holy Grail. They can't understand how could a frum family, guys with yarmulkes, we eat kosher, they played games on Shabbos. They played games on Yom Tov. There's all kinds of events that go on. How could you be in this business and still, be from, keep kosher? And so I found that you could really, truly have an impact and inspire kids around this business. I have so many stories, almost like on a weekly basis of how kids, I always tell them, if there's a living example that you could be from in the United States, and it doesn't detract from anything that you want to accomplish. If you want to do anything, you could put your mind to, we're the perfect example to show you. You could be from. You don't have to do anything. People always ask me, by being from in your business, did it hurt your business? I think just the opposite.
Really?
Yeah, I think just the opposite. I think we stand apart. Everybody knows that we're from. We come. You don't have 6 hours, but I have so
we'll go as
many,
long as you want. Sorry, Mayor Shatner.
But I have so many stories of. I'll tell you over, and I just told over this story last week. I think it was a Project Inspire group or one of the groups that I spoke to. It was my. How did I get into this business? You asked me that question, so I detracted from the question. I came back from Eretz Israel as a bacha, and I wanted to go back to Eretz Yisrael for a visit. My father says, my father was a hardworking Holocaust survivor, wasn't a wealthy man by any means. Says, you want to go back to Eretz Yisrael, go get a job, make some money, and you could take a trip back. So I took a job in the garment center, a very close friend of mine. His brother was an accountant for some company that specializes in the garment center. So I took a summer job. And it was a garment center. It was a company that made jackets, outerwear. That's my name, OuterStuff. It was a company, and I worked there for the summer. I made a few dollars. They liked me so much. They called me back a second summer and a third summer. And it's a story. Eventually, I had a break. I started working there full time, and my boss wanted to retire, and I was able to buy into the business. But that's a whole other story. But the irony is that you have to be consistent in what you do. So I'll tell you a story. I started telling you a story. So I'm in work, and I started my company, and I was able to get it's a whole story too, but I was able to get an NFL contract. My first license that I got was Major League Baseball, and we made Major League Baseball jackets. We made these satin jackets.
What year is this around?
Oh, God, 89, 90.
Okay. That's so long ago.
That's so long ago.
This is right about when you were born, yeah.
Yes, that's true.
First, we made some Major League Baseball jackets. Eventually, I bought a company called Starter, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And I get my first NFL contract. And it's about 25 years ago now that I had my first NFL contract. It's my first year that I'm with the NFL. It's my first time I'm going to Super Bowl. It's my first Super Bowl ever. It's like a big deal, It's a big deal.
A lot of people don't ever go to Super Bowl. You're like, your first Super Bowl. I'm like, okay.
Well, it's been almost 25 years. So
wow.
And you've been to 25 of them since?
Pretty much. Hey, the kids.
Yeah, me too, by the way.
And all the people that we host. So I'll tell you about that. So
your first Super Bowl.
My first Super Bowl, and they put me up in a place, and I double check, and I make sure that there's I stay in a hotel that there's Chabad. Baruch Hashem, thank God for Chabad. Even though I'm a Gerach Chassid, we have tremendous hakaras atoif to Chabad, because for somebody that travels both here in the United States and all over the world, I once spoke at one of the Chabad conventions. They're just the most unbelievable people. With their, it's just, I don't think anybody that doesn't travel and go around the world appreciate, Chabad as much as I do and my family. So I check where there's a local Chabad minyan, food I could get, and then I get a schedule from the NFL, Super Bowl weekend, and I see that there's one mandatory event that you have to go to, which is the most important event for all licensees. And when is that? That's Shabbos brunch. It's a Shabbos brunch. I said, Shabbos brunch? What am I going to do? So I said, listen, I Googled, I had my secretary Google where it is, and she tells me it's about 2 miles from the hotel that you're staying. I said, 2 miles? Okay, I wasn't that concerned about the tchum, I don't know, but they said 2 miles. I said, okay, I'll go to daven in the morning. I'll come back. My wife was with me, and I'll come back after davening. I'll make kiddush for her. We'll wash and have something to eat, and I'll take a walk out of respect. It's my first Super Bowl. So I have to respect for them. I don't want to jeopardize my relationship. I don't want to think, but I always go with my yarmulke. I've always gone with my yarmulke in all my years of business. So I start walking, and as I'm walking, some cars are stopping along the way. Saul, you want to lift? I said, it's Sabbath, and I don't go into a car on Sabbath. And the second guy comes by, and third guy comes by, and finally, by the time I get there, the commissioner comes running over to me, and he says, Saul, they're all talking over here that you walked all this way. It was hot. I think it may have been in Arizona. It was pretty hot. I said, yeah. I said, Roger, not only did I walk here, but I also have to walk back. I said, because it's the same. He says, are you kidding me? And I start explaining to him, because he really didn't know, what
you really didn't know?
Who knows what a Shem Shabbos 25 years ago?
Yes, 25 years ago, you're right.
Yeah, but also who would he have interaction with that would know that halachas of Shabbos, you don't go in the elevator and he didn't know that.
Right.
So he was very appreciative of the fact that I showed him the respect, and I came and everything else. So the following year, it's a month or 2 months before Super Bowl, and the NFL starts sending out all the invitations and all the hotel reservations. And my secretary tells me the commissioner's office called and wanted to know which hotel did you pick, because they give you list of all the hotels. And I try to pick the one that's closest to the shul in walking. And so I said to him, I don't know, tell him. I don't know why. They called me back and they said the commissioner was so, really so amazed at what you did and you walked, that you have to walk on Shabbos, that they sent out an edict from the NFL, whichever hotel Saul stays in, that's where they're going to make the brunch every year. So he asked me, did it hurt? So now I know where the brunch is, and I got to walk out of my room and walk down 10 feet to go to the brunch. But the NFL had such respect, the fact that I have to walk. So not always do you have to worry about it. If you do the right thing and if you're consistent and if they see that you really mean it seriously, okay, they're going to respect you. And I think we built a tremendous respect because we act morally and we act, the right way, and we have, where people are respectful. And I think all the leagues over the years have really respected that and have given us, tremendous rights and things, privileges that I think that if I wouldn't be a frum Jew and they wouldn't realize, who we are, I don't know if I would have gotten.
And it's incredible because you grew up with parents who survived the Holocaust. Right. So just to see that difference from what they grew up, and then here you are walking with a yarmulke, and the NFL is changing their schedule around you, a frum Jew. That must have been incredible to witness. Yeah,
well, we have a lot of stories like that. As recently as this, you asked me about the Siyum Hashas. I'll give you the first example with the Siyum Hashas. So before we get to MetLife, I was involved in the Agudath for many years, even before MetLife. And we'll get back to how that happened. But at one time, we needed multiple locations. So, we had Madison Square Garden. We outgrew Madison Square Garden. We needed Madison Square Garden and the Nassau Coliseum and the New Jersey, whatever. Prudential Center and other arenas. And we kept on booking them as we grew. And there was one year where they called me up and they said they were able to get Madison Square Garden. They were able to get Long Island Arena. But one of the arenas, I remember which one, had a basketball game, even though it was so far in advance. They have a schedule, the NBA. They had a basketball game scheduled for that night. And they said, Saul, you're the sports guy. Now you know why Rebbas Gidolim put you in the sports business. We need that arena for the Siyum Hashas. You got to get him to change the NBA schedule. I said, are you kidding me? Change the NBA? Well, you got to try. You always try. If Rebbas Gidolim gives you an assignment, gives you a test, you have to go. You have to try. So I'll never forget. I went up at that time and I called up David Stern, who ended up, Zechron Levracha, just passed away.
Yeah.
And became very close with him. Actually, a few months before he passed away, came to my office. He always called me Rabbi Saul. And the highest respect, very brilliant man. Not from, but very Jewish-minded. And so I went up to see him and I took along some materials to explain to him what the Siyum Hashas is. So I said to him, he says, Saul, what do you want? I said, I need to change this NBA schedule. He said, are you crazy? Change the NBA schedule? He presses a button and he calls in this guy. His name was Russ Granick. He was the assistant commissioner of the NBA. And he says he was in charge of all the scheduling. Anyway, I'm not going to bore you with the back and forth, but at the end of the day, we put it into the Siyum magazine, thanking the NBA. They changed the schedule of the NBA to accommodate the Siyum Hashas. So that's one of the many stories of how you could,
just got to ask.
But you got to ask and you got to understand there's a cheshbon to everything. Hashem has a cheshbon. Why? So we'll fast forward to the Siyum Hashas. So, myself and I have the most unbelievable, dedicated group of Balabatim. Some of my closest friends became close, that we became like the Siyum Hashas steering committee. And headed by a chairman, my good friend Ralph Reeder, and it was Dudi Diamond, and Hashi Hertzka, and Yati Weinrib, and Dovi Gross. And we met for 2 years, or maybe 2.5 years, every single week, once a week, to plan the Siyum Hashas. The amount of work that went. So it wasn't you woke up one day and Siyum Hashas, but
right. It wasn't like 2 weeks before.
But this is for this one, but on the previous Siyum Hashas, I always tell over the story. So we're having a meeting and we're saying this is crazy. The logistics to arrange 5 different indoor places and everything else. And I said at that time, let's go for the big time, because I'm in the sports business. I said, let's try it. Let's try MetLife. And they said, MetLife?
You already changed the NBA schedule. Why not?
What else?
Let's
go for MetLife. You could put 90,000 people in one place. What a kiddush Hashem. You got to think big. I always say, I tell my kids and I tell everybody that comes to me, and I try to mentor a lot of young kids that come for business advice because I think that's important. To give them advice. I always say, you have to have big hasagis. You have to think big. If the Rebbeinu Shalom sees that you're thinking small, he'll think small for you too. But if he sees that you're thinking big, you have big hasagis, he's going to say, wow, this guy has big ideas, big aspirations. I'm going to help him to fulfill his aspirations. So I said, let's try it for MetLife Stadium. And then we met. We have to check everything with the Meyetzes of the Torah, and they love the idea. It's outdoors. You're taking a chance. It could. The first time it wasn't now in the middle of the winter, January 1st, which is a whole other story. But the first time was in the summertime. We had a pretty good chance of the weather's going to be good. So we went, and I called them up, and friendly with some of the owners and the Johnson family and the Tish family. And I told over this story. Some of you may have heard it, but it's definitely worth repeating again. And this story brings tears to my eyes every time I tell over the story. So we have what's called a signing ceremony at MetLife Stadium. So the owners came, Mr. Tish, Mr. Johnson. We brought Novominsker Rebbas, Zeichet Tzadik Levrocha, came. The staff of the Agudath, my executive committee of the Siyum Hashas, and we come to do a very historic thing for the first time ever. We're taking a football stadium to make a kiddush Hashem, a Siyum Hashas. And 2 or 3 weeks before the signing ceremony, I get a call. Some guy calls me up, Mr. Shlomo Werdiger. Yes, my name is so and so and so and so. I said, okay. He says, I heard you're having the signing ceremony. Would you mind if I came and said a few words at the signing ceremony? I said, say a few words. Why? Who are you? He says, I worked for the Tishes for the last, I don't know, you said 10 years or many, many years. And I was the guy that helped build this stadium. I worked for him to build this stadium. Sure enough, I checked him out. He became much frummer. He went to Eretz Israel. He has a big Kiruv program, and he's a fascinating individual, really a tremendous human being. And I found out, sure enough, he worked for the Tishes, and he helped build this stadium. I said, okay, if it's that, and he was literally begging me. He says that's how important it was to him. I said, fine. So we have this signing ceremony, and Novominsker Rebbe said a few words. Some executives from the stadium said a few words. I don't remember if it was Rabbi Zwiebel, Rabbi Gertz at the time said a few words. I may have said a few words, and then I call on this guy to say a few words. And he gets up there and he thanks us, and obviously he gave a big hug to the owners of the stadium, so they knew him well. And he got up and he said, I flew in specially from Israel to speak here tonight. And he said, I'll tell you why. He says, I worked for you, Mr. Tish. I worked for 10 years, helped building the stadium. He says, I spent 10 years of my life and $1 billion of Jewish money. $1 billion of Jewish money and 10 years, hard years of my life to build a football stadium. And then I became from it. I had a retrospection in life. I said, what was the cheshbon of the Rebbanu Shalom? What did he want from me? How did I waste 10 years of my life and $1 billion of Jewish money? He says, now I understand. He says, that's why I had to come back here and speak about, and ask to speak, because don't ever think for 1 minute that everything, Rebbanu Shalom has a cheshbon on everything. He knew that this stadium, he said to Mr. Tish, you think you built this stadium so they could go and drink beer and have a good time every Sunday? This stadium was built for this one purpose, and it was worth 10 years of my life. That I know now that this stadium is going to be the biggest kiddush Hashem in our generation.
Wow.
Is that an unbelievable story?
I'm getting the chills.
How did Woody Johnson and James Tish,
yeah,
what was their reaction? Did they just
Tish had tears in his eyes. There's no question Mr. Tish had tears in his eyes. And again, I don't have to tell you that we did it now for the second time, and literally the Siyata, the Shmaya, the Yad Hashem, and everything we did around both of these events. I mean, one day we'll write books and about the first Siyum Hashas, I was stopped raining a few minutes before the Siyum, and now and what it could have been, and look what it turned out, January 1st, And a month, a couple of months
Corona.
later, Corona.
It's-
So there's no question. But again, that's taking what you do and apply it to make sure that you make a kiddush Hashem.
That's really beautiful. We interrupt this podcast to tell you a message. That was by the way, pills from AMR Pharmacy, the best pharmacy in the world. Okay, so I was at the Siyum Hashas this year, and it was amazing. But I got back. I was outside for a long time.
And it was cold.
I had a cold. I caught a fever, and
You caught a fever from where? The cold?
yeah.
Okay, interesting.
And then
You sure you want to stick with that story?
yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna make a Corona joke, and I'm like, that's not funny.
No.
Corona's not a joke. But I wasn't feeling well, and I didn't use AMR Pharmacy because I didn't know about them at the time. But had I known about them, it would have been so easy.
They probably could have had a van with medication beat you to your house before you got out of the Siyum Hashas parking lot.
Seriously, I mean, we were just literally talking about this before organically, that they offer free delivery.
Free delivery.
It's such a no-brainer.
Free delivery.
Free
You
delivery.
don't have to go to a pharmacy. You do not have to go to the pharmacy to get your prescription meds anymore. You don't have to wait on a line. Dude, this is the future here. Like,
This
we're
is the
talking
future.
the future.
Yeah.
So enough is enough, guys. You heard us talk about it so many times, and
This-
we're not going to stop until each and every single one of you call them up, okay?
Nachi will hunt you down. So please call
848
There you go.
222 1110, or just head to their pharmacy if you want to learn more about them. That's amrpharmrx.com. Right over here, I think it has the
Oh,
info.
Yeah, and if you're listening, if you're like, what are you
You're
talking about?
listening, I'm just pointing at mid-space. But yeah, check them out, guys. They are the best pharmacy in the world, and transitioning to
Wait, I want to talk about AMR.
oh my
a little
gosh,
more.
you're always coming off.
Okay,
Yeah, go
sorry,
on.
sorry, apologize. But also, I don't know if we spoke about this enough. The fact that they literally sort out your pills for you. So yeah, granted, me and you, we could probably figure it out. But
Maybe
first
your
of all,
87-year-old
yeah.
grandmother can't.
So even for us, it saves us time. It just makes it easier.
Yaakov's not really great at sorting
It's
out his own
safer.
pills.
No, I'm not. And they also. I mean, these are M&Ms. They're delicious. But also, yeah, for as you said, it's someone, say even elderly parent. I don't know, so your parent's like 45 years old. I'm kidding. But let's say literally you have a grandparent or an elderly parent. It's the way to go with these blister packs, literally of the future. Now, Nachi's going to transition.
dailygiving.org. You want to feel part of a nation, part of an go ahead and go to dailygiving.org and sign up. Just try it for a month. Try it for a month.
Yeah.
$1 a day that you're giving to Daily Giving. And they're going to choose a different organization every single day that gets your dollar. But it's your dollar plus over 3,000 other people's dollars. So you're joining this team. You're joining a family of people that are giving tzedakah every single day. You're checking that box. You could feel good about yourself. You get that email where it says your dollar today was given to Chai Lifeline. Your dollar today was given to fill in the blank organization. So you guys need to get involved. So head to dailygiving.org.
Yeah, and on the website also you can see all the organizations that
See
they give
all
it
the
to.
organization they
They're
give
so
to.
transparent. They're so easy to use.
So easy to
and
use.
I know I said this last time that I'm going to sign up, and I actually didn't sign up, even though I'm giving this ad. But Bli Neder, between now and our next ad, I guess, which is next week, I am signing up.
Guys, we understand you procrastinate and you mean to do something. You don't do it. You mean to do it. So we'll just wait right now for you to do it. Go.
See, was that so hard?
It took 8 seconds.
It was so easy.
Come on. All right, guys. You know what? Enjoy the rest of the episode.
Please sign up.
Bye.
I want to delve into more of the Agudath. First of all, could you define the Agudath? I know they do a million things, but like, what exactly is the Agudath about? What are they busy with? What are they doing? And what's your role?
Well, first of all, Agudath is not just busy. Agudath is a holy organization that was founded by
Tress?
Chafetz Chaim and Chaim Oizer, the Ger Rebbe, the MS, and all the chart of all the Gidolim of the previous generation. But today, the Agudath today is mainly it's an advocacy organization. That's the address. The slogan of the Agudath is the keepers of the sacred trust. It's the organization in America that advocates for from Yidden, in the United States. I mean, if you want to give it a nutshell, I'll just give you a little bit. Current events. You guys are not interested in history, but in current events, first of all, any problem, anything to do to defend the From Yid, whether it's at the workplace, whether it's in universities, yeshivas, we have an office in Washington, anything to do with any religious rights, with yeshivas, is done. The advocacy is done by the yeshiva. We have 155,000 from kids in day schools and yeshivas in New York alone. You can imagine how many more tens of thousands are there in Lakewood and everything else. And Baruch Hashem, we advocate to the government, to City Hall, to the governor's office, to the mayor's office. We have something called mandated services. There's a separation of the biggest problem facing couples today is the burden of tuition. There's no question about it. The biggest single problem is the big expense, and as it is with the high tuitions, the rebbeim are still not, making a working wage and still not coming due. So we have a brilliant staff led by Executive Vice President Chaim David Bell and a bunch of attorneys and lawyers and advocating to make sure that we lighten the burden of these parents. So what we said is there's a separation of church and state in the United States. You can't, the governments can't fund something that teaches religious. Right. But we say, but a kid has to get to school, needs transportation, whether it's in a yeshiva or a public school. Kid has to eat lunch. A kid needs to get immunization, needs to get a flu shot or a measles shot. The kid needs to have, a nurse has to be in the building. There are certain things called mandated services that the state and the city mandate for the yeshivas to do. That has nothing to do with religion. So over the years, we've gotten, could be $1 billion through the work of the Aguda in the yeshivas. We have offices all over the country. We were one of the pioneers to make sure one of the fastest growing communities in the United States is in Cleveland. Why? Because we have these vouchers in Cleveland. There's vouchers now, some vouchers in Florida. We have a staff, all over the United States. Since Corona started, we have Zoom calls every single morning for months and months and months with all of our regional directors. I can't begin to tell you how many tens of thousands of calls and how many seminars we had for all the yeshivas, all the moistus on the PPP money. And we are the resource for all yeshivas, for all from families, navigating the system, navigating what you can do, what you can't do. I can't begin to tell you how many times I meet Manalim, and one of our biggest fans is right here, your next door neighbors, Rabbi Bender, who's a champion, Rabbi Bender, Rabbi Reisman, and we meet all the time, and says without the work of the Agudath Israel and what we do, for the yeshivas, look what we just had now. We sued, the camps. Who does that work? It's all the work that Aguda does, and we spent hours.
We were trying to get you the past few months, but we knew you were trying so hard, working day and night. I'm not kidding, for the camps.
Would you say that if the Aguda, if they didn't exist, or if they weren't doing what they were doing, Chas Shalom, then let's say tuition is, throw out a number, $15,000. It could potentially it could be 25,000 or 30,000.
It's hard to quantify. It would definitely be a lot higher. That's for sure.
Is there hopes to get it lower than it is now?
Yeah. Listen, the problem is in New York and all of these blue states that the teachers unions are very strong. Mm-hmm. But we have a very close relationship. We had with the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, who was before she became Education Secretary. She's a friend and very good friend of a lot of our people in Agudath Israel. We worked with her on the school choice for many, many years. I sat on with her on school choice boards, and we are a big fan of hers. And she's trying very hard now to do this. That would be a Yeshua for Clow.
I bet that's a lot of people, I don't know if they come to you or they speak to Aguda, how can we knock down the cost of tuition? How can it get lower and lower and lower? Because that is a huge, a family of 6. Yeah. They're paying $70,000 or upwards of $70,000 to send their kids to school.
Yeah, it definitely is a big issue. New York is a problem because of the strong teachers union. But we're not giving up. We're trying. We keep on trying.
It's a continuous battle.
Continuous battle to try to get, first of all, to grab whatever we can get, if not vouchers, at least to get what we can get, and to keep on advocating. It says we have school choice. We're allowed to send our kids wherever we want. We always threatened. We always said to the governor, and he's, governors for many years used to come to my house, once a year and meet with some leaders, and we said to him, he said to me, Sal, if it would be up to me, okay, we'd shut all the yeshivas and enroll 155,000 kids into the public school system, we bankrupt the state. We bankrupt
who said that?
I said it to the governor.
Yeah.
I said, that's what we should be doing. We'd literally bankrupt the state. If we would bankrupt the state.
Yeah.
Because even if it cost our kid $10,000, it would cost the public school kids 2.5 times that.
Here alone in the 5 towns, imagine every single kid enrolled in the public schools here.
Yeah. But okay, listen, we're trying.
What did he say?
He said your rabbis would never do it. I once had a
challenge accepted.
I once had I'll tell you a cute story. I once had in the advocacy work. I once had a breakfast meeting, and we work very closely with the Catholics. And actually, Cardinal Dolan is we work closely with. There's a good guy. We with the Catholic association. And I was invited once to a breakfast on Fifth Avenue with the Cardinal's residence, and it was together with the Cardinal and the Governor. Governor Cuomo was there, and because we really have a similar agendas. We need and this is many years ago, and the Governor says, the Cardinal says to me, he says to me, Saul, you say. So I gave a very impassioned speech about the yeshivas and how the continuity of Jewish education and how important this is, for us. It's our lifeline and the families. And the Cardinal, said his piece. And then finally the Cardinal got up and said, Saul, could you explain one thing to me? He says, we keep on closing schools. We don't have money. We keep on closing schools. And you keep on opening up new schools, new yeshivas, new girls' schools every single year. How do you do it? What's the secret to this? And I said, it's no secret. It's just that we don't let ourselves be constrained by financial haves or have-nots. We have no choice. We have more kids. It's not a choice. It's not like you're going to send the kid to yeshiva or not send the kid to yeshiva. We have no choice. You have to. We find a way to do it. You guys sell the buildings and you close the schools, but we're just not going to do that. So the advocacy for the yeshivas we're trying now. I mean, there's Zoom calls and daily meetings to work out a plan for how to safely open up the yeshivas, and trying to explain to the administration. We have rabbis. Bill sits on the school advisory boards, and we sit on as many boards as we can. Explain to them Zoom learning is not for our kids. I mean, there's certain things that we just can't do. I mean,
with camps as well. You explained that it's just
camps was a big problem. It was a personal. I took that as very, very personal. I was literally physically sick.
Do you go to camp as a kid?
Of course I went to camp.
Camp Agudath?
I went to Camp Agudath, Camp Adarat Torah at that time. My grandchildren in camps. I tried. We talked to the governor's office. We did everything humanly possible. And there's no question there was a political... We came up with protocols. We worked so hard. And I have to give credit to Zoom calls. Every camp administrator, every yeshiva. There was such a collaboration over here between whether it was Pupa or Satma or Darche or Rabbi Pfeiffer from Romamu or Camp Agudath. There was Chabad camps. There's
Camp
never
Monk.
been a collab. What?
Camp Monk?
Nah,
Camp
he's a
Monk
big
for
Camp
sure.
Monk guy, so
Yeah,
I gotta
two
mention
grandkids in Camp Monk. So there's never been a collaboration. I mean, there's 42,000 kids that go to summer camps, from summer camps, 42,000 kids. There's never been, it was a kiddush Hashem to see a collaboration of so many different, from all spectrums of Yiddishkeit gotten together to do it. And we spent fortunes of money and lawyers and came up with such protocols, such great protocols. You put them into a camp, didn't make any sense. To me, opening them up as a day camp. Every night they go home, they come back in the morning, they're exposed. Here, you bubble them in for a couple of weeks.
Right, and a lot of people, they don't make sense of that. A lot of camps are open right now, and the kids are going home every night.
It was very political. I personally really think the governor was gun-shy. If he hears this, that's great. Governor, I'm your friend, but I think you made a terrible decision.
Hello, Governor Cuomo.
I think he was... I think he was gun-shy from the decision he made with nursing homes and killed a lot of people. And I think his advisors were telling him you can't afford, another tobacco, another crisis. But terrible mistake, terrible mistake. But we are resilient. Day camps are working.
Right.
Day camps are working. Great, Baruch Hashem. There's very few instances, cases. So, but yes, what Agudath does, this is one of the small things besides the learning, we have programs in Masmide and Pirche and tens of thousands of kids that called in daily, hundreds, maybe millions of Mishnayos that were learned through this whole COVID crisis. So it's a myriad of things. It runs the gamut from advocacy to Torah projects to I'm happy to to send you some material.
Yeah, I'll post that.
Yeah, I mean, over COVID has been a whole new world, I'm sure, for the Aguda and the responsibilities, and a lot has happened. I think I know that the Aguda had a good working relationship with Mayor de Blasio and elected officials, but throughout Corona, that kind of got a little bit rough.
Yeah, listen, the working for the Clow, you asked me, Rabbi Scherer, who was really mentor of mine, and we used to talk for. Then we used to spend a lot of the Tovim and Eretz Yisrael together. I used to go he used to enjoy davening in Ger. I used to pick him up at the hotel where he was staying, and we walked together, and we spent a lot of time walking back and forth. And he said, working for the Clow is a humbling experience. Sometimes you have to work with people that you don't agree with their ideologies. You definitely don't agree with a lot of the things, but you're working for the Clow. You have to work with them. The Tavas HaKlal. There's a lot of things that we can't do. He said to me, the most humbling experience is Shlomi working in Aguda is going to a Meyatzes Gedolei Torah meeting. And he said he would walk in, here's Rabbi Moshe Scherer, is larger than life, and he would walk into a Meyatzes meeting, and there sitting there would be Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, and Rabbi Gifta, and all the previous Gidolim. And he was so sure, he was coming to make a recommendation, and there wasn't a doubt in his mind that what he's recommending is going to be. And he says he'd walk out with his head between his legs, and they told him absolutely nothing doing. And he spent weeks preparing for it. The humbling experience is you work for the Clow. First of all, we answer to our authority. We don't make any decisions. Everything that the Aguda does, that's one of the really one of the reasons that I do it, because we don't make decisions. Balabatim, contrary to people out there, Balabatim don't run Agudath Israel. The Gidolim run Agudath Israel. With everything they tell us, that's what we do. And we listen 100%. We don't always agree. So working with de Blasio, yeah, we work with him. I had a good personal relationship with Bill. There was times when he would call me up every Friday, wish me a good Shabbos. Cute story, you just remind me, cute story. I was once had my mother, she'd be well. Ma, happy birthday this week was a birthday. Many more bezindet and 20.
Amen.
And I'll never. He used to call me literally almost every Friday to wish me a good Shabbos. And I picked up my mother in Borough Park once and brought her to my house on Shabbos. And the mayor calls. I put him on speakerphone. I said, Bill, please, tell my mother. My mother's on the phone. Tell her good Shabbos. I tell my mother. She says, who's that? I said, the mayor. She says, why are you always joking with me? I said, tell her. Then he said it again. He says, Mrs. Werdiger, good Shabbos. And she says, oh, I think I recognize his voice. Yeah, listen, we have a wonderful.
Does he still call?
Well, not.
Should I probe further or no?
No, listen. It's been tough. This whole situation over here is what's been happening has been very, very tough. He's the mayor. He's done a lot of good things for the Frum community, a lot of things for the Jewish community, and regretfully, things in New York have progressed in the wrong direction in the last couple of months, and let's leave it at that. But you still need to maintain a good relationship with them. And if one thing that all of this has taught us is that we don't have we think we have permanent residency cards. We're guests in this country, and if we could never forget that. We could never ever forget that.
Can get too comfortable.
Yeah, you can't get too comfortable. I think the young kids, you guys, you don't have the history. You're the next generation. I remember the first time I went to Washington, D.C., and I went my first Aguda Washington mission. And we sat in this big room, and I remember who was our guest speaker. I don't remember which of the senators or congressmen was sitting in one of these Truman room or Roosevelt room, whatever it is, and we're having a kosher, just finished davening Mariv, and we have a kosher dinner, and we have some very prominent senators addressing us and everything else. And I got up and introduced, and I said to him, it's just, I just can't, I'm awestruck. I said, 50 years ago, all the Rabbanim from America came, and they wouldn't let them in. They wouldn't let them into the Capitol, while millions of our brothers and sisters were perishing in the crematorium, and they wouldn't let them in. And here we are, This is the United States of America. Look at this. It's a dina de machusa. It's a dina shel chesed. It's unbelievable. We're sitting here in the Ruza room, kosher meals. All the senators are coming. But we can't forget. We can't forget.
It's special coming from you specifically. I think that you're saying that, just like a person who's like you. I feel like made it to the tops, and like you're friends with a lot of politicians, and you've dealt with a lot of higher ups, and still you're saying this is not our home.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's one thing that you have to learn, it's humility, and when this whole Corona thing started, I'm the one frum guy in the sports world, so. Very good friends with the commissioner of the NBA, Adam Silver, who was also Jewish, and we happened to be talking, and he said to me, Saul, what's your take? What is the message here? What's God's message here to the Corona? And I said, Adam, listen, I'm not a rabbi, and I'm not a preacher, but you're asking me my opinion. I'll tell you what opinion. Here is, you guys, let's use the NBA for an example. You spend millions of dollars every jump, and you analyze this and you analyze that, and the artificial intelligence, and what kind of, and the sneaker company Nike spends tens of millions of dollars to jump 1/4 of an inch higher, and we think we're in control. And everything you think is in control. You're gonna do all the statistics and come up with all the things and make. I said, I think the lesson here is we're not in control. Here there's a microbe that's invisible. You can't even see it. And it's destructing the whole world. The whole world is falling apart for one invisible microbe that you can't see. So I think the one lesson here is a little lesson of humility. We are not in control. If we think we're in control. So I think that's the lesson to everybody here. We're not in control. It's been, United States is, as I said, it's a medina shel chesed. Compared to other places in the world that I go to, it is, but we have to respect it. We have to understand and not take it for granted. And so I think it's very important for the young kids to understand and know that.
Well, a lot of people are, a few of our guests that we've had on this show, but a lot of people are saying now, like, now's the time to go where we belong, to go to Eretz Israel. So do you think that's?
Listen,
I was walking in Manhattan today.
Right.
I didn't feel like so safe. Do you in your
listen, I Baruch Hashem, the B'nai Shalom watches over you, and I go everywhere out and feel safe. It's definitely different than it was a year ago, 2 years ago. Listen, we're hoping we have the Torah today in America, the yeshivas, the moistus, it's unbelievable. Yeah, listen, eventually we all dream to go to Eretz Israel, and Eretz Israel, I try to go to Eretz Israel as much as I can. But while we're here, and while we're, we should realize that we have to behave accordingly. They look at us, they expect a higher standard from us. We're really looked at, regretfully, that's the way it is. Somebody else could do something, it doesn't get the, second glance, and a frum yid does something, and it makes the headlines of the papers the next day. So we have to understand that. We have to understand that we really, there's a reason, especially a frum yid who walks around with a yarmulke, that we're looked at differently. We have a higher moral compass than everybody else, and we have to understand that. And you could, on one hand, you can make a kiddush Hashem by doing that, and on the other hand, you could chas v'shalom make a chil Hashem, and they exasperate and take everything that we do out of context. So
it's true. Let me ask you, how would you define the word askin?
Askin.
Yeah.
Listen,
I don't think it's in the dictionary, is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I never Googled the word askin. Listen, my definition of an askin, and what I try to imbue in myself and my family and my kids. There's some people, Baruch Hashem, that Rebbas and Gidolim was good to you, and you're successful, and you made a lot of money. Success is measured. I don't know, but today, regretfully, especially with the next generation, the young kids, success is financial success. That's regretfully what's all they look at. And so I think an askin. What does an askin mean? Somebody that Rebbas and Gidolim was good to you, and he gave you some money, so you take out your checkbook. Or you get, today, nobody writes checks anymore. It's all wire instructions. And you say, so you make a large donation to a chesed. By the way, there's never been more chesed in Clow Yisrael than there is today. I have to kudos to the young kids and the amount of chesed that's done today. There's a gemach for everything, and there's people that take care of everything, and charity and funding, and there's really, I have to say, this is Baruch Shalom should take us out of this terrible magefa just for all the chesed that's being done while this is going on. The unbelievable caring that one person has for the other, and the help that everybody's giving each other now during this magefa should be a schus alone to take us out of it. But an askin, in my opinion, is not somebody that just gives his money. And askonis is not, it used to be askonis, a shayna yid, he can write a check, or he buys mafte yoina, or, and he get the Daven's Mizrach because he's the biggest. I measure an askin somebody that gives of everything. We have askonim that work with us, and they're good at, that give so much of their time and their advice. They don't have the money. He's as big an askin to me as the guy that's writing the big check. So I always say it's easy to, we have in our family, Baruch Hashem, a lot of things that we're involved with. We have a special affinity to things involving special needs kids. And that's something I give credit to my wife Esther, that we've always, we have you have to have consistency. We just had our 28th event in our house for Chush. Jewish Center for Special Education.
A breakfast, right?
A breakfast.
Your house is famous for that.
But 28 years
Wow.
we're doing it. This is
28 years.
I'm
Actually, this
28 years old.
Yeah, so we have a special. I always go and I go there and I speak to the schools, and we have a special needs program like a Camp Haskell. We have that in OuterStuff Israel. We have some respite homes, and I always tell it's easy. Baruch Hashem was good to me. It's not like I'm dying if I write a $100,000 check to the organization for the year. It's not like my kids are not gonna have whatever they want anyway. But you guys, you're leaving your families. You're going to volunteers. You're leaving your families. You're going away for Chalamoid Pesach or Chalamoid Sukkot or Shabbosim, and you're spending with the kids. That's an askin. An askin is somebody that gives a part of himself. Somebody that really. So I always try to say that I really try to do that. I try to give. It's not just of your money, but of your time. And that to me, that's what an askin. An askin is somebody that gives up his time, and which is harder, by the way, for somebody that's successful and runs a busy life and a bigger schedule. A bigger sacrifice is your time rather than your checkbook.
And we're always thankful for any guest that comes here, because we know it's all our guests. It's time is very precious to them. Do you have a favorite mitzvah?
My favorite mitzvah. If I would have more time, I would spend definitely more time on kiruv. It's, to me, that's my most rewarding thing that I do. Speaking to these kids, speaking to these boys, to these girls, and showing them the beauty of Yiddishkeit, the beauty how you could be Shabbos. I just spoke a few weeks ago. I went with the program, the Wolfsons and Mr. Horn from Brazil have this program called Olami, and I travel myself and some other people go and speak to these kids, and the impact that you could make on kids. I did a not a podcast. I did a thing for the Lakewood Fellowship. I got an email this morning from a kid. I spoke a couple of months ago, actually, at an event, and some Jewish girl asked me, how do you do it? You go all these places. How do you keep kosher? What do you do when you go to all these places? And I explained to her, and I told over the story. I have this famous story with the hot dog story. Have you heard my hot dog story?
No, I want to hear it now.
I had a famous story. So, the wherever I go, we always arrange kosher food, and most of the leagues,
and a minion also,
and a minion too. Yeah, most of the leagues know, and they arrange for us kosher food. But one of the leagues, I think it was Major League Baseball. They, as much as they tried, we came up to eat in the place. It was like kosher style. It wasn't. So we
called Hebrew National, but
yeah,
it's
well,
not
even it was, yeah. And so we usually had a problem eating, but out of respect for them, we'd shuffle the food. And we didn't have, you can't show them. They tried it.
Right.
So I forget. It was a World Series. I think it was in Chicago, or it was in Cleveland. There was one of the World Series games, and we walked into the stadium. I came in with one of my kids, and we passed by a kosher hot dog stand. There's a big market. There's a kosher hot dog stand. So I walk over to the kosher hot dog stand, and the guy knew, Mr. Werdiger, how are you? What's doing? I said to my son, let's buy a couple of hot dogs in case there's nothing to eat upstairs. Let's buy some hot dogs. So I go over to the guy. The guy says, Saul, Mr. Werdiger, I'm really sorry. We're completely sold out. I said, how could you be sold out at a World Series game with Jews coming in Chicago of hot dogs? He says, yes or no? Some Meshuggah came and bought like 40 hot dogs. One guy came. They have a cheshbon of exactly how many they sell. And says, one guy came and took like 40 hot dogs. I said to my son, I said, it's really, okay, whatever they have upstairs, potato chips and, and whatever we'll manage. And I come upstairs to the booth, and we sit upstairs with the commissioner, all the guys, and they come running over to me. They said, Saul, don't you ever complain. We bought you 40 kosher hot dogs, he said to me. So I told over the story to these college kids and to these kids. The next day, I get an email from the head of this group, and they said, read the following story. A girl was going home from this thing. It was, I remember where it was. She was going home the next day. She was on the plane, and she writes, and, I didn't order kosher food. So they brought me my meal. And I'm sitting there thinking about, I just spent 2 days, and I just heard that story from Mr. Werdiger. And he goes to the craziest places and eats kosher. I'm sitting on an airplane going home, and I'm going to eat tray for food. So you don't know the impact you can make. And so to me, what my favorite thing to do, if I would leave OuterStuff and have more free time on my hand, that's what I would do. I would literally go around and inspire kids and show kids the really the beauty of what it means of keeping Shabbos, of eating kosher, of trying to lead a more Jewish life. And to me, that's the most inspirational and meaningful thing that I think at least I could do.
And I heard you do something at NBA All-Star Weekend as well, which is sort of kiruv, no?
Yeah, you don't have 6 hours. It's very much kiruv. So we started off many years ago. We went to NBA All-Star Weekend, and I would go with my family, my kids, and we didn't really have we walked to Chabad, but we made a Friday night through the Shabbos, and we would invite a few people. It started off very, very small, and one day my son gets a call from the one of the guys in the NBA who we didn't even realize that he was Jewish. He had a name Chris, and I didn't think he was Jewish. And he says, "We hear you have a Friday night, a Shabbat meal." And we said, "Sure." He says, "Do you mind if I come, bring my wife and my kids?" We said, "Sure, by all means." And so he came, and it was very nice, and his kids. And the next year he calls me up and he says, "Would it be all right if we put this on the NBA portal? If we put it out to all of the NBA employees saying, if you want to join for a Friday night Shabbat meal, to come to the meal?" He said, "Sure, by all means." And so the next year we had 40 or 50. I'll make a long story short. We get close to 100 people now for Shabbos. We have a minyan with a Sefer Torah. We have people that are coming. You have kids in the NBA, kids who are, I don't know their level of frumkeit. I'm not sure how many of them are Shabbos or not, but they spend months preparing a Dvar Torah for Uncle Saul. They come on Shabbos, the kids line up, and they prepare to say a Dvar Torah and talk about the Pasha.
Kids of
NBA employees, yes. Kids of NBA employees who come and they say, and they look forward. We make NBA Shabbos yarmulkes. We have an NBA Shabbos sitter. Became a classic. The commissioner even comes every year, wants to get one. It's like a hardwood floor cover of a sitter.
That's great. We got to get my hands on one of those.
Sitters. Again, I'm just telling you, the lesson is, and the beauty is that my kids are as passionate, if not more passionate about it than I am, and they're really, taking the reins on this, and they're doing it, and they're continuing. So
which is really beautiful that you have. It's rare that you have like so many. Your family is known that all your children and son-in-laws, they all work together and they all love each other, and they're really
takes a lot of work,
right?
And most of the credit of that goes to my wife.
Okay, kudos to your wife.
Not to me. Most of the credit goes to my wife for keeping the film. Yes, Baruch Hashem. I think one of the ways that Hashem is paying us back is that the fact that we have such a close family. We work together, which is not easy. We work together every single day. We work together, we travel together, we go to events together, the kids, we all get together, yeah. So
I heard during Corona, the fact that you and your wife had a quarantine without your family was particularly difficult for you, because you're such a family man.
Very difficult. We'd look out, they'd come by and sit on the roof of the car, and, like everybody else, not alone. Baruch Hashem, now we're, we're
getting back to normal.
Getting back to normal.
As we wind down, we have probably 16 questions left, but we'll limit it just to 3. How do you balance that? I know you're very involved in Agudath. I know you're very involved in your business. I know you're very involved with so many Rebbas, and you're also very involved in your family. How do you balance all of that?
Yeah, it's not easy. The family, regretfully, listen. I was very involved in building a business. In those days I traveled a lot to Asia, and it's not like today. Those days you'd be away 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time. Today you could pick up, you could be there and come back. Excuse me. But it's not easy. You have to prioritize. I mean, it's not easy, but you have to find the time. I think sometimes I look back and I say to myself, I don't know how I do it. Yeah, I put in long days, I put in long hours, but you try to. I don't know. There's no secret formula. I think you just go. If you think about it too much, it becomes too daunting. I think if you think about how am I going to do it? How am I going to do homework with the kids? And how am I going to, even though my kids will tell you today, I never did homework with them. I used to hire a Rebbe to learn with them. I never, the joke in the family was that when we stopped marrying off our kids, the only women are going to come to the weddings because I was never around. My wife went by herself all the time. It's not easy. I put in long hours, long days, prioritized. I'm not the most organized guy. I try to.
You seem very organized. So you emails back and forth about coming here.
Most punctual guest.
Yeah, punctual I am. That's one thing.
You came 15 minutes before the interview. You're the first person from all these.
Yeah, it's not easy, but you can't think about it. You just got to do what you got to do, and somehow you find the time. I tell you.
Running through, there's a question we like to ask our guests. Who's one person in history that you'd like to sit down with for an hour that's no longer alive?
That's an interesting question. Okay.
We get you thinking about things you never thought you were going to think about.
You know what? Interestingly enough, I would love to have spent some time with Meir Shapiro. So now that I'm thinking of it, you talk to me a lot about, and I'll tell you why. If you read a little bit about the history, I think everybody should read the history. He was, not only did he have an unbelievable yeshiva, not only was he a world Talmud Chacham, he was a member of the Polish Senate. He was a member of the Polish Senate.
Really?
He was a brilliant orator, a brilliant person, most respected person, Rav of a city, young man. Every one of his Talmidim loved him, but he was beloved by all the Polish people too. He was a brilliant speaker, defender of Jewish values. He was like an all-around guy. He was like the Rav, the schus that he had of coming up with this idea of the Siyum Hashas, Daf Yomi, of Daf Yomi is incredible. Here's a man, I don't know what possessed him. I'd love to understand, what was, I understand he realized he was a visionary. He realized that the fires were burning in Europe. He realized that there's going to be a time that the Jews are going to be dispersed all over the world. And it was time to come up with something that's going to bring commonality. No matter where you go, you could travel to South America, or you could go to Australia, or you could go to London, and they sit down and you have something in common with your fellow Jew by having us. So I think he's the type of person, an all-around, rounded, brilliant person. I would have loved to be able to spend some time with him and talk to him.
That's very nice. There's a famous story that I think a lot of people heard, but I think it's important that other people could rehear it. There's a story with you and the ambassador of Korea.
That story's been around so
I know,
much.
But
I really, you sure you want me to?
Just one more time. Only because I'm telling you, there's someone listening. There's a lot of people.
I haven't heard it.
So there you go.
Yeah, it's been okay. I'll say, but
unless you have a better story, unless you have a different story.
It's just the perfect example of how you could accomplish something without even knowing by behaving and doing what's expected from Jew, of really being who you are, not being. I always tell the kids, you can't separate. They ask me why, I have a lot of friends that are successful and don't wear, let's say, yarmulke at work.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I felt that, I have people coming to my office, they have earrings and ponytails and I have yarmulke.
You can wear yarmulke.
But I think one of the things also, by having that yarmulke on your head and realizing that people are looking at you, you have to act accordingly. And I think that's an important lesson. But I tell, if you run your business and you're not separating out, you're not a different person in business and a different person at home. You're not a different person in Besmedrish and a different person in business. You have to, you're a frum Jew, you have values, and you have to act accordingly, morally, ethically. You have to be honest, and then you could accomplish unbelievable things. So that's the story what happened here. I just had in my askonis, and again I'm repeating it. I
haven't heard it yet. I
apologize for all the people that are hearing this.
There's a lot of young people, more than you'd be surprised.
We'll take a poll, but I haven't heard it yet, and I'm dying to hear it.
Okay, but
Chazar is the Iker, so
yeah. In my askonis, I think we'll end with this story because I could be here for two. Maybe in 2 years from now you'll invite me back again. Okay, we'll have some more stories. But
I'll send you a Google invite.
Okay, but in my work in askonis, we also worked a lot with the UN. And I became friendly with the UN Secretary General. His name was Ban Ki-moon. He was a very famous. He retired a couple of years ago, but he was a very good guy. He was a Korean guy, Ban Ki-moon. He was the Secretary General of the United Nations, and so we met occasionally, and we met sometime. And one day he calls me up at the office and he says, "Do you have a summer intern program?" And I said, "A summer intern program?" I said, "Sure." I put him in touch with my people from HR, and that was the last I heard of it. And I didn't hear anything else. And then fast forward a year later, it's now, that must have been the beginning of the year. It's now June and July. And now there was a terrible intifada in Israel, and there's war raging in Gaza, and they're fighting and killing each other, and fires every day. And the UN is raging, always censuring Israel. There's always something going on. And I get a call. My secretary tells me somebody's on the phone. He says he's the Korean ambassador. I said, Korean ambassador? It's a Korean ambassador. So I pick up the phone. He says, Mr. Saul, Werdiger? Yeah, this is Ambassador June. Yes, Mr. Ambassador, what can I do for you? What could you do for me? You kidding? I want to thank you for everything you've done for me. I said, what did I do for you? I couldn't figure out what I did. He says, I want to take you out for lunch. I Googled near the UN, not far, there's a kosher restaurant called Prime Grill, and I want to make a lunch date with you to go out for lunch. So I said, okay. And then I find out, sure enough, this Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General, recommended the Korea ambassador's daughter, she was interested in fashion, to apprentice and work upstairs in my office, and she's working there. And they tell me she's a great worker, she's a very, very nice girl, and he's calling to thank me for hiring his daughter. Okay, so we make a lunch date, let's say for 3 weeks from now, and we go to lunch date. And meanwhile now it's titzach, it's koching in Israel, and it's the UN is fighting, and every day they're censuring Israel, and it's like a big mess. That morning that I was supposed to have lunch with him, his secretary called up and said he's going to be a half an hour late. I said, fine. So I go to Prime Grill, I wait for him, and he walks in, and he has this bodyguard with him, with the earpiece, very important, and he sits himself down. And the first thing he says to me, he says, tell me something. He says, Mr. Werdiger, he says, what makes you Jewish people such special people? I said, Mr. Ambassador, I don't know, what are you talking about? He says, Koreans are a lot like Jewish people. He says, we're very family oriented. We're very nervous about our kids. We want to make sure they have the right environment to work in. We were petrified coming from a traditional Korean family. We're coming in out of New York, and our daughter's going to go work in a place. Well, New York, you have all these, wild kids, and who knows where she's going to work and who's going to influence her and what's going to be. We were petrified, but she insisted, and we Ban Ki-moon said, the UN Secretary General said you're a nice guy, and so we came. Every night she comes home and she says, Mom, Dad, what a great place. Everybody dresses nice. They don't curse. They don't scream. They're very respectful. And she says, the whole day there's rabbis coming up to the office. And not only that, they pray every day in the office. He says, they pray every day in the office. He says, what kind of place did I find my daughter? He says, yeah, they have services every day. They pray. We have Binyan Machmarav. He says, we can't get over. She's coming home and she keeps on telling us that. And we keep on saying, wow, what special people the Jewish people are. They're such nice people. And we're so thankful for what you're doing. And, with our daughter. I said, it's very nice. Thank you. He says, I'm sitting now, Korea is not a permanent member of the UN. They're a temporary member. That year, Korea was a temporary member of the Security Council. And so he says, this morning, there was a vote to censure Israel, to put some sanctions on Israel for what they're doing. And I turned around, he said, I called my wife, I said, isn't Israel Jewish people, the same Jewish people where our daughter works? They're such nice people. Why are we always censuring Israel? He says to his wife. She says, I don't know. He calls up the head office in Korea. He says, why are we always voting against Israel? Do we have something against the Jewish people? My daughter works there. They're such nice people. I don't know what they said. They said something to him like, do what you want to do. He says, I don't feel comfortable voting against Israel. I'm going to abstain. And he abstained from voting and censuring Israel. I'm looking at him. I said, this guy's a Meshuvah. His daughter works for me, and so we're nice to his daughter. And he went and changed the policy. I think it was. I told the story to Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson. He didn't believe me, so he checked the record, voting record. He checked the voting record of Korea. I said to him, "You're telling me the truth?" I said, "Yeah." I went outside. I'll never forget. I picked up the phone, and I don't remember if I called Malcolm Homeline or I called somebody. They said, we're all sitting here scratching our heads. We can't believe it. The first time in their history, Korea didn't vote against Eretz Yisrael. He says it can't be. I told him the story. He says, Saul, it's crazy. I spoke to all the Israeli officials. I didn't want to tell you, even the prime minister himself called me because they couldn't believe the story. And the next 2 days later, there's a vote in the UN again. And I get an email that morning, my dear Jewish friend Saul, do not worry. We will not vote against the Jewish people. We will not vote against Israel. And that whole summer, there was a few votes. And every time he invited Esther and I, my wife, we went to the embassy for dinner. You can't even believe it. He catered in a full kosher dinner. What did we do? We did nothing. I never met the girl. I never met her before this. Afterwards, I made sure to meet her. And she was such a great employee. We kept her. And she stayed longer. She worked for us for a few years till the family moved back to Korea. What did we do? Nothing. I tell my kids, what did we do? Nothing. We conducted the business and ourselves the way a frum Yid is supposed to conduct. We were nice. We told the girl in the front desk, somebody comes up that we don't know, here's a pushka, give them a few dollars. You don't send anybody away. You have a minyan every day. You're respectful to people. And she saw that. And wow. Look, we did nothing. For millions of dollars, you can't buy a vote on the UN Security Council. So that's the story. So the lesson is success is great, and it's nice to one of my mentors in life, who was really my closest friend, and he should really be well, was Mr. Benny Fishoff. He should be well. Benny was like my second father, and I always told him the same thing. He says, what goes around, you gotta be nice to everybody. It's nice to be important, but it's much more important to be nice. You're gonna meet somebody one day, you don't know the roshim you can make as a frum Yid, and you don't know the impact that you could make. This is a classic example. It's a wild story. You could impact not only yourself and your family and your people. You can impact, Clow Yisrael. So that's really the lesson. I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Well, thank you for coming. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, and we're gonna take you up on that offer in 2 years, Mr. Hashem. Okay. Maybe we'll come to you.
I probably went way over my time.
No,
but,
it was good. That was a really enjoyable episode.
What a treat.
That was a treat. That was a tasty treat. This was so weird.
That was really weird, Yaakov. But he also runs. Saul Werdiger runs 3 miles a morning.
He showed us his
5 miles a morning.
Which is very impressive at his age.
It is very impressive. What do you mean at his age? What is that supposed to mean? Taking shots at old people?
At 45. He's not 45. I don't know how old he is.
Could you run 5 miles a morning?
No. He definitely runs more than me and you put together. That's for sure.
Could be.
But yeah, he's a really impressive person. And there was so many more notes on our list of what we wanted to talk about with him. So we're going to have to get him back in for another episode. But stay tuned for next week. We have... drum roll. I'll do the drum roll. Nachi will say,
Rabbi Dr. Benji Epstein, PhD.
Yeah.
Wow. It was an amazing episode, and we're so excited to give it to you guys.
Yeah, he's just give a description. He lives
in Israel.
Yeah.
He's
a psychologist for, psychologist. He's
a psychologist for psychology.
No, he's also the psychologist in Hask, right?
Yes.
And he puts out good vibes and good juju in Camp Hask.
Sprinkles fairies.
It was maybe our most meta episode with him.
Meta?
Yeah. A most
I don't know what that means.
Mindfulness episode.
Yes, he actually wrote a book about mindfulness.
Yeah, and you'll hear all about it with him next week. But again, we want to say thanks to our sponsors, AMR Pharmacy, and also dailygiving.org.
Guys, stop what you're doing right now
please.
And go into your browser or your friend's browser
Or
because
if
you don't
you're
have a
listening-
browser.
If you're listening to this on Apple or Google or Spotify, it'll be in the show notes also.
Yes, just click on the link, dailygiving.org, and just give $1 a day. And it'll go to so many different organizations, and you'll actually feel good when you get those emails showing your dollar went here today. Your dollar is one of $3,500. You join together, and really, at the end of it all, you will be responsible for millions of dollars of tzedakah because you're part of that group.
And you will be a meaningful people. Boom. And I will finish off with my
Trademark.
catchphrase of the week. Everyone, remember to wear tzitzis if you're a
Man.
guy. Yeah.
Thank you, Yaakov. Ciao.